And welcome to the next episode in our editing tutorial. What we're going to talk about tonight is the last couple of things we need to go over in terms of sort of like support commands before we actually get started on the mission logic. There are two more facets of that I want to touch on. The first one is when you've been working on the map screen like this and putting units in various places, sometimes you might have thought to yourself it'd be nice if I could actually see the terrain. Well, you can. If you right click somewhere on the map, and you can't be too close to an object, otherwise you'll select the object. But if we were, for example, to click up here next to our box, but not too close, we'll get a menu where the top choice is View. Now when I click that, it's going to go off and actually start loading the various things that make up the map. So it's going to generate the textures and create all the objects and vehicles. That can take a little bit, so we'll just stand by here while it does that. Shouldn't be more than a few seconds. And there we go. So as you can see now, we're in the map. If you notice the little turret symbol up here in the top right corner, you can see that it's pointing to the east. So just like units default to the east when you first come into the map, you'll also be defaulted to an east heading. If you click the mouse, you'll notice the cursor goes away, and when it does that, you now have pan control with the mouse. So we can look around and see some units over there. We scroll back around towards the south. Okay, so it allows us to take a look. You can see there's some other units down there. Now, just like in the game, you can also move this camera view, and it operates pretty much like a vehicle does. So in the game, we have available to us the W, A, S, D, and X keys. W moves forward, A and D sort of strafe sideways to the left and the right, X moves backwards, and S will stop. So just like in the game, if I press the W key, I'll begin to move forward. If I press it more than once, I'll go faster to the point where I can really get to be moving. If I then hit the S key, I'll stop. And if I hit the X key, I'll back up. And again, I can do it till I'm going as fast as I like. Once I get back to about where I started, I'll go ahead and hit the S key. Okay. Now, as I said, the A key will move you sideways. The D key will move you to the right sideways. Those keys do not hold. So for example, if I tap the A, I only get a little bit of movement. It does not continue. So it's unlike the W and X in that regard. So if I want to continue to scroll sideways, I have to hold the key down. With the W and X keys, they will continue to move in that direction until you stop them. Now you also have access in this map mode to some keys that you don't have access to in the game. One of them is the Q key, which will raise your viewpoint. And again, it will do so as long as you hold it down. And then the Z key will lower your viewpoint. Right? So that allows you some extra capability that you don't have in the game. Another capability that you have is a pretty unlimited zoom. So for example, if we find those units that we were looking at before, the key that does this is the usual magnification key, but it operates a little bit differently. So it's the N key, N as in Nancy, and if I press that and hold it, I will zoom in. Now I have a very, very long range here. I can zoom in quite far, as you can see. If I do Shift N, I'll be able to zoom back out quite a ways. So I have much more magnification control than I usually get in the game, where the magnification levels are fixed to whatever the particular gun sight uses. Another key that's very handy is the keypad plus key. If I press that, it's going to give me a somewhat simulated thermal view. Again, if we use the N key to zoom in here a little bit, you can see that it looks very much like a TIS view. Toggling that or pressing the numeric keypad plus again will just turn that off. All right, so that's very good for checking the map and the location of your units in different views. So I wanted you to know about that. That's very handy when you're doing map editing. If you're looking for places to position a battle position, for example, where you want to be perhaps hull down or even turret down, you can find those places and actually get a look at things. To go back to the map, you just hit the F5 key like you normally would in the game, and it will take you right back to the map view. All right, so that's it for manipulating the terrain and actually being able to look at it while you're doing design. The one other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was what's on the options menu, because those options are very important in the flavor of your scenario and the way the scenario operates. So let's drop that menu down for a second and take a look at it. You'll notice here I can set the mission date and time. And if I select that, I'll get a small dialog box here where I can enter all the various values. The current year, month, day, hour, and minute. The UTC offset for whatever the local time is. So if I'm doing this mission, for example, in Kentucky, which is on the east coast of the U.S., here during daylight savings time, it's actually -4. So I might set that like that. Again, if I, depending on what region of the world I'm in, I probably want to set that appropriately. H hour here is the hour that the scenario actually kicks off. Generally, you'll notice here it's 12 o'clock, and it's about the same time here. Normally, those two are equal. I've not seen too much use of this value with scenarios, although I'm sure it probably has some use. Otherwise, obviously, it wouldn't be there. So perhaps some of the military customers use it. I don't know that much about that. All right, so that's setting the mission date and time. Obviously, setting this hour and minute up here controls the level of daylight that you get, whether it's pitch dark or early morning or late twilight. How you set this will make a big difference in how your map appears and whether your units are going to have visibility or not, or whether they're going to have to use thermal. All right, the second option we have is the minimum light level. And this is basically the light level that there will be when it's considered to be dark. So if you want to simulate a very bright moonlit night, you might set it maybe to 40 or 50%. If you're wanting a completely overcast night, you could set it down to 0. And that would be essentially there's no light at all from anything other than the thermals. Time limit allows us to set the time limit of the scenario anywhere from completely endless, it will go as long as it goes, up through 100 minutes. And then there's a plus and minus time variable. So you can see here I've checked off both the plus 10% and minus 10% random selections. So you can have both a positive and a negative. And what this means is that this scenario, since I elected to use 90 minutes, 10% of that would be 9 minutes. So it's either going to be somewhere in the range of 81 to 99 minutes long, and you don't know exactly how long it will be. That's very good because it keeps the players on their toes, and they can't automatically assume that they're going to have the full 90 minutes. There are also mission ending criteria down here, but we'll talk about those a little bit later. All right, next choice is the visibility level, and obviously here this is talking about the eye visibility level. Thermals can see through things like dust and fog. So here I've set it for 3,000 meters, but you can put it up to maximum or all the way down to 10 if you want to simulate a very heavy fog. There's also a choice here for sky texture. So I'm going to choose that, and let's say I wanted to take a cloudy day texture. So we'll do cloudy 03. All right, so that loads that. Now let's take a quick look at the map here by doing the F1 view function again, or the right-click view function. And if we if we do Shift-N to back the view out a little bit, you can see now that we have more clouds than we had before, and it's a bit more overcast. All right. Unfortunately, probably the easiest way to view these is to look at them from the Windows Explorer. You can look at them as any texture file. Um, if I choose Cloudy 4, for example, and do another view, you can see now it's a different sort of cloudy day. It's a much more sort of like stratus clouds. So you can choose whichever one you like there and whatever suits the mood of your scenario. You're also allowed to set the red troop uniform and the blue troop uniform. By default, it goes to Russian for the reds and US for the blue, but you can set them to whichever uniform is most appropriate for your scenario. The next two choices we'll talk about a little bit later. This is the red support and blue support, which determines how much artillery and air strike support you'll have during the mission. The next choice describes whether or not the AI is allowed to use smoke. Typically, you'll want to leave this on. They should have the same capabilities as human players would. So generally, you'll want to have this on. Map view determines whether or not the player can use the map view. And map updates determines whether or not the map will get updated every so often, or whether the positions will simply be static from the start of the scenario. Map updates is sometimes set programmatically by using events within the simulator to change this during the gameplay, so that if, for example, the CO tank is knocked out, you can arrange it so that map updates are then turned off. And from then on, that side will get no more updates to the locations of their units. Friendly ID is a choice that isn't used very often, at least not in any of the games that I've played. And what it does is it identifies a unit on the in the game world as friendly. Now, obviously, that's completely unrealistic. And fratricide is a part of the game that you just have to get used to. You have to figure out how to maintain your situational awareness and know where your comrades are. And if you don't do that, you may kill a friendly. Having this on obviously makes that far more difficult. In fact, it has to be almost intentional, but it's completely unrealistic, and I've not seen a scenario that uses it. Likewise, these next two, kill when hit and remove killed, are also quite unrealistic. Not every shot is a kill shot, so obviously you wouldn't want this turned on for most battles. Maybe if you were doing a firing range type of battle where you only wanted to make sure the player could hit the thing, maybe you would use it then to make sure that he didn't have to shoot it a second time. But that's about the only use that I can think of for it. Also, remove killed. Again, probably in a firing range scenario, you might want to do that to take the hulks off the screen. But in the real game world, you'll certainly almost want to leave them there. And then the last four choices simply determine what positions are going to be available for the player to select when he enters a vehicle or when he's at the assembly area during a multiplayer game. By default, all four will be checked so that the player can either drive, occupy the CO's position, occupy the gunner's position, or look at the tank as an outside observer. But if you want to turn some of those off, you're certainly able to do that. All right, I think that's about all we need to go over in terms of the last bit of preparatory information. So this is going to be a short part 4, and we'll pick up part 5 when we start planning the course of action for the red units. So we'll see you then.